First of all, what does it mean to you, that the language that they're using?
Well, it sounds an awful lot like a Federal Reserve, doesn't it? And that's what it is. Like, everything the state says is a lie, and everything they have is stolen from someone. So, and it's true. While it's true that Bitcoin is for enemies, that doesn't mean you have to like your enemies. So, I prefer it if states had no Bitcoin and no other money at all, for that matter. That would be optimal. Like, this was going to happen sooner or later anyway, so it was probably nothing we could do about it. But the US, for instance, it's all the confiscated Bitcoin that the FBI stole from Silk Road and so on that is now the so-called strategic reserve, right? So it's just other people's Bitcoin that are rebranded now into another thing. And while this may make number go up short term, I would prefer it if more and more if Bitcoin ended up in the hands of individuals instead of the hands of institutions. And to be honest, it's not the institution actually holding the Bitcoin, it's some guy at Coinbase, and I'm rooting for some guy at Coinbase. Like, you've all seen Fight Club, right? You remember the last scene where the Pixies song plays and he's just shot his face off and the skyscrapers are falling down and crumbling of all the credit card companies. That's what I'm looking forward to. That's what I'm in this for. Like, it's against all this institution. This is what we're breaking. Like, Bitcoiners simping for politicians is just revolting to me. This is the problem we're trying to fix. So yeah, fuck them.
Well said. Ben, we were talking about this before we came on, strategic Bitcoin reserve and nation states stacking Bitcoin. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I noticed that the title of this panel was not necessarily country strategic reserve. I think what's actually more important is, as you were alluding to, is that what's more important is that as your family have your own strategic reserve. That's what's more important. I think we're all on the same kind of view. Fuck governments. I don't want to. The way I see it is like an analogy of a thief who comes into your house every month. He takes 20% of your stuff. Now, you could argue that maybe that's for the greater cause, maybe. But do I care if that thief goes away and buys Bitcoin with it? Well, I'm kind of impartial to it. If he wants to, I guess he might come and thieve from me a little less, so okay. But what's more important is that my family have their strategic reserve.
Grafton, Vexel, peer-to-peer, absolute advocate. Like, nobody gets more hardcore than you.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but when I was trying to figure out why I was put on this panel, strategic Bitcoin reserve, and then Ben just kind of summed it up, is it doesn't say nation state. It's about individuals. And when I look at what we are trying to do at Vexel is we sometimes forget what the first line of the white paper is. It's a peer-to-peer electronic cash without trusted third parties. So yeah, you should be building yourself a strategic Bitcoin reserve, but I believe you should be doing that the way it was intended to be. Not asking for permission to buy Bitcoin or to sell Bitcoin, but to go and buy it peer-to-peer the way it was supposed to be. So yeah, I absolutely believe that we should all be creating strategic Bitcoin reserves, but we should all be also spending our Bitcoin, buying and having fun. As Donald Trump liked to say, is have fun playing with your Bitcoins. Told me everything I needed to know about politicians over the last year who were simping for, politicians in Bitcoin and strategic reserves is no, opt out. Don't ask your government to stack Bitcoin, stack yourself and stack no KYC and do it peer-to-peer. That's how I look.
So, Theo, you wake up tomorrow, Emmanuel Macron has announced that France somehow are going to start stacking Bitcoin. What would be your reaction to that?
It's retarded. It's retarded. Oh, I need to elaborate.
Please do.
Okay, so yeah, as other panelists mentioned, like the idea behind Bitcoin, it's separating money from states. So I don't really see the point of hoping for the state to front run the individuals in this. At some point, it's it's unavoidable. Like as our common friend Savedin put it eloquently, you cannot insulate yourself from people holding harder money than you. So they will have to do it at some point, but in the meantime, we have a chance to change a lot of institutions, the way they operate and the way we organize ourselves through these institutions. So the latter, the better. And also, as Knut pointed out, you basically have two ways this can pan out. First, which is the more likely, because of like there is too many stakeholders, responsibility and stuff like that, they transfer custody to some custodian, some professional custodian, Coinbase obviously, so they won't own any Bitcoin. And the other way it can pan out, they actually decide to first do IT, which I think is something you should not want from a government, and they have custody over the funds. And so like 2 terms later, you will find out that, oh, it disappeared. Oh, Nancy Pelosi launched like 20 leverage shorts the day before it was announced. Oh. And like, it's just like bad incentives alignments, and at the end of the day, we also create a situation in which they will have a big incentive to create payment layers on top of that, and like trying to tell to the many people out there that are still not in Bitcoin, like this is a new thing, here is a wallet, you will use that, you will be happy, it's sanctioned by the government. And at the end of the day, you cannot ensure that the liabilities that they will issue will be matched by assets. It's technical impossibility. So there is like all the reasons in the world to not want that, especially because it's like a big mess waiting to happen, whether it is Emmanuel Macron or any other political leader in the world.
So proponents of it would tell you that this is the way to pay down the national debt, and this is for the greater good. And you know, these are the arguments that you put forward. Can you think of any others? Like, I'm trying to find the pro arguments. What are the arguments that we are being presented as to why this is a good thing, why it needs to happen?
I can actually think of that. It's because they are what you would say in France, un peu retardé. So they're absolutely retarded. Like government can't both be super deep state, super intelligent and manipulate everyone and be complete retards at the same time. They're either or. And I think the latter is like Occam's razor tells us that the latter is more plausible. So I'd say maybe this is a way to just get more eyes on Bitcoin, and the only way that the governments can use their Bitcoin is to spend them. And at the same time, like if they try to steal them, people will learn better security practices, hopefully. I mean, at the end of the day, like, what do you prefer, a pro-Bitcoin politician or an anti-Bitcoin politician? And I myself am conflicted about this issue because, like, maybe Bitcoin is much more needed in anti-Bitcoin jurisdictions than it is in pro-Bitcoin jurisdictions. So if you have an anti-Bitcoin politician, then people will have to take matters into their own hands and think about privacy, think about security, run their own node, and so on and so forth. If the government can dictate what a node is, then sooner or later, like, we'll all be drowning in spam. So, and we don't want that. So like, no, that's the most pro-governments owning Bitcoin argument I can think of, is that they will fuck it up and it will be glorious. I guess.
I think governments have just observed that it's money go up technology. They've seen it for individuals. Now they're starting to observe it for companies like Strategy. You know, they're seeing that play out, and they're just making the next logical conclusion of, well, we'll just do that on a country scale. And
Strategy and similar companies, they're using a flaw with the fiat system to leverage Bitcoin. Like, so it's going to be very interesting to see this all play out, because sooner or later there are no more sats for them to stack because people refuse to sell their sats. Like every time a Strategy buys, they buy at a higher price. I think the first time Michael Saylor bought was around 10,000 a coin or something, or maybe a bit more than that, maybe 20,000. I don't remember. I think more is like 20,000, right, or 17,000, something like that. And now he has to pay more than $100,000 per coin. So the SAT squeeze is still real. They're getting less bang for the buck every time they do it. And whatever. A company with Bitcoin on the balance sheets is just Bitcoin with a bunch of more risk attached to it. What if Michael Saylor gets hit by a bus tomorrow? Like, I bet you that won't do MicroStrategy stock any good, but Bitcoin won't care. Honey Badger doesn't give a shit. So.
And what you said earlier about it sounds like a Federal Reserve. So what did we have before the system? If you look through history, you had a strategic gold reserve. How did that work out? I mean, you know, we're just repeating.
Yeah, and what you said, if I may, Daniel, what you said about, while I forget, I have ADD, so I have to attack it instantly. You said something about like people arguing for a good way, this being a good way to pay off the national debt. Duh. The government wants the national debt to be there. They are the ones that want that system to be in place. It's counter to their incentives. They are never going to do anything to stop that. That's the thing that keeps them in power. That's not their wish.
Theo?
Yeah, also if I can add something about that, if they paid the debt tomorrow, the whole financial system collapses, basically, because it's the collateral backing everything in the fiat system. Then you also have the issue that, how to put it, if like you don't have to look that far into history. We had this thing in the US called the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. You don't have to look at gold. And 2 years ago, the last administration decided that just to make people happy and maybe they will vote for them, we will deplete that, which is supposed to be something in case of military emergency to be sure that the US Army has enough oil to function, and they just wanted to fight back all prices going up. So all strategic reserve that government created in history ended up like just depleted by politicians for stupid reasons because they need to buy vote all the day.
Grubby mitts off it. They can't keep their grubby mitts off it, can they?
But I mean, we are always going back to the same thing. There is no property rights in government allocation of capital. So you cannot expect them to use that wisely.
I was just going to add,
sure.
yeah, so, and how did they build this strategic petroleum reserve? How did they build a strategic gold reserve? Stole it. Basically, it's what they're doing. And what are they going to do to build a strategic Bitcoin reserve? Well, hey guys, you could now pay your taxes in Bitcoin. Right, that's fucking theft of your Bitcoin. And this is Executive Order 6102, we can look at that in the past as well. For those that aren't aware, 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102, which meant that anybody holding gold, he basically illegalized the hoarding of gold. You had to turn your gold into your nearest Federal Reserve Bank, member bank. From corporations down to the individual. Are we walking ourselves blindly into another one of these executive orders, but with Bitcoin? Grafton, you're itching to say something.
But, well, no, I'm just saying, like, is this on? Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. When I think of it, it's like, again, you go back to the gold, it's like they confiscated. They wanted to confiscate gold from the individuals. And, you know, again, we're talking, why am I on this panel? But KYC is where I look at it. And from that standpoint is, if you're creating a strategic reserve for yourself that's fully KYC, well, you've basically created a honeypot for yourself where they can target you as an individual. We saw like a week ago that what Brian Armstrong came out and said, ransom. They held our customer data ransom, and we chose not to pay, but we'll promise we'll do better next time. And that's my issue here. If you're creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve, you create your strategic Bitcoin reserve that no one knows about, and you do that without KYC because it's just a matter of time before they leak that you own it or they try to confiscate it. We all live in a country where maybe someone has had, like in Czech Republic, they call it an execution, is where you haven't paid your bills, so they come and they take the money straight out of your bank account without asking. And they can do that, but with Bitcoin, they can't. especially if they don't know that you have it. So yeah, when I think of strategic Bitcoin reserve, I think strategically, I don't want anyone to know that I have a Bitcoin reserve.
Now, if I may expand on that, yeah.
Please.
Because this goes so deep. So I'd like to make the distinction between ownership and possession. So ownership is your legal relationship with your property. So this is an example. Yeah, Max introduced me to a couple of years back. Actually, it's I own my hat and I possess my hat. If I give my hat to Ben, then I still own my hat, but Ben now possesses it. And if I say, Ben, please, can I have my hat back? He has two options. He can say, yes, Knut, you're a wonderful human being, you can have your hat back. Or he can say, go fuck yourself. Which is what most central...
He looks pretty good in it.
He does. Oh, whoa.
This beard.
If you had blue eyes, I was like looking myself in the mirror. Anyway, so... a lot of African countries got to experience the difference between ownership and possession when the Bank of England refused to give them their gold back. And this happens all the time. Bitcoin is I would say a level even deeper than this, because you don't really own a Bitcoin. Well, ownership is in the legal system. So certain people may say you own them and other people may don't, but depending on what judge you ask and what jurisdiction you're in, you own them or not. You don't possess the Bitcoin. You cannot possess information. Intellectual property is not real. It's only real in the context of ownership, so someone deciding something for someone. But all possessing a Bitcoin means is that you have access to information that you believe that other people don't have access to. And the reason you believe that they don't have access to it is because you know that the plausibility that they do is so low, so you practically own the thing. So if you know a private key to a Bitcoin address, then to a key pair, then you have access to information that you know that this information is so random and so scarce that it's very implausible that someone else has the same information as you do. But all that is based on your assessment of probabilities. You also believe that the 21 million cap won't change ever. So you believe that they will be finite going into the future. You don't think Peter Todd will win the debate. Like, you don't believe that the 21 million cap will ever change. That is another thing that is your assessment of a probabilistic thing in Bitcoin. So everything in Bitcoin is probabilistic. And this is what changes the entire map here. So whether we're talking about governments or stuff, like at the end of the day, it's just people. Bitcoin is not a system the way the fiat monetary system is a system. A system sort of implies that it's top-down and someone designed it. The same way, that's also, by the way, why I don't like the word Bitcoin standard, because that implies, a standard implies that someone said it was a standard, and it implies top-down. Bitcoin is just human beings doing stuff and talking to one another. And using numbers. Like every node is a person. Every miner is a person. A miner is not the ASIC running in a hangar. It's the person deciding to buy the ASIC and run the software in the hangar. Like, there's always a human being behind every decision in Bitcoin. So it is us. It's a part of us. And that makes it completely different than everything else we've ever tried. Which is why this notion of governments owning Bitcoin and corporations owning it, like a government isn't a thing. That's also just people doing stuff. It's just that they do stuff with different ways. A government is just people doing stuff and some stuff with guns. And a government is just a corporation, a criminal corporation that has a gun and can take your stuff. Like, if you're attacked by a normal thief, you become more afraid and you buy maybe a guard dog and a gun and a security camera. You can't do that with the government. They keep on taking stuff every month and you can't do anything about it if you're in the fiat system, which means you have to adopt a higher time preference. The fact that you can keep your possessions and over time is the thing that allows you to have a lower time preference. Imagine the highest time preference you can have, where if you're robbed of everything you own, so you're naked and outside. It's Ireland, so it's kind of fucking cold and wet. So your first priority becomes, I need to find food and a pint of Guinness and some clothes. And you're probably willing to do a lot to find this stuff to survive, right? So a state of high time preference is a state of fear. And what is the opposite of fear? Is hope and love and all that cuddly, nice things. And that is a low time preference. That's what that allows for. If human beings are allowed to keep their stuff, they are more likely to be kind to one another.
So proponents there would jump in to play devil's advocate, and they would say, well, that's why we need the government to stack the Bitcoin so they can feel that and start changing their minds and start being more, and you're up on time on the mic, so put it down.
Okay, yeah, I would just say that that's retarded. That's my only comment.
Yeah.
Would you like possession of your hat back?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
So what do you guys say to that? You know, that when you face that in the Bitcoin circles or those that are you know, saying this is what we need to do to move the world forward. We need government to understand Bitcoin and to stack it and to feel like the mind shift that we've seen, and then we will all be able to live in the bright orange future.
It's retarded. No, but if like you really have to like argue against it, like first we mentioned at some point like the excuse for it, it's like, yeah, it will help us pay out the debt. So quick math here, let's say $1 million per coin, 1 million coins I buy, it makes 1,000 billions of dollars. It's currently the interest expense on the outstanding US debt, so doesn't change anything at all, first. And also the thing is that like once they do that, as we mentioned before, okay, let's say they have 1 million Bitcoin and they don't have it because they don't have ownership of it or they don't have possession of it, coming back to a framework. Then the thing is that like they will use that to say, oh, now our debt is way more sustainable, so we can print a bunch more fiat to pay for silly stuff, or just expropriate some people at the edge of the world because like now we can finance our army and our military to do that way more easily. But in the white paper you have like this phrase which I think is really important. I will paraphrase a bit, but which is the only way to ensure against double spending is that all participants in the network are aware of all transactions. In the fiat system, you cannot do that because in order to be sure that against this 1 million Bitcoin, they don't print too much fiat against it, you would have to audit all the balance sheet in the world to make sure that how many liabilities exist against this asset. And that's basically also why proof of reserve is a scam. Like it's a gimmick run by custodial exchanges to make you believe that it's safe to deposit coin on their platform, but at the end of the day, it's just impossible to do. And like we were talking about government strategic reserve and also like individual reserves, corporation reserves. And at the end of the day, it's just a spectrum. You can have like the knowledge of your private keys and you possess or own the thing, I forgot, but you will explain after.
You just know it.
Okay, yeah, you know it, it's better. And then you could have a bunch of stakeholders with rules and wet codes that will decide like how this can be spent, how this can be accessed, but it's a spectrum. And like we can debate where if like dark gray is better than light gray, but at the end of the day, if you don't have your keys, you don't have anything. And so any kind of structure whereby you will like transfer custody in some shape, way or form to someone else will end up in a really bad way because the guys that know their private key at the end of the day will have way more agility and way more freedom to dispose of their possession and their property as they please. And yeah, be it a government, a corporation, it's just a matter of degree.
Something you mentioned earlier today, Daniel, was about the cautiousness that people should have about using their Bitcoin to get a loan where their Bitcoin is securing that loan. I think in the in the face of a government having Bitcoin, that would just be like too tempting. They would do that, and so whether even if they could, you mentioned about proof of reserve, even if they could show proof of reserve, yeah, but what debts have they got issued against that? Who knows? And yeah, so I think that would soon become a very high likely chance of happening.
I mean, yeah, again, I go back to, I think it starts with looking at the last year. It was a campaign year, and everybody was talking, go ahead, Bitcoin strategic reserve. What do we want that for? Why do we want it? And you look at it, and it gives Bitcoiners hope that, people in the government are coming along and they're starting to side with us, right? But I think everything starts with proper Bitcoin education around why Bitcoin? Why do you need a strategic reserve? Because when I look at what politicians are saying, it's hard because I'm an American living outside. I always introduce myself and say, don't hold it against me that I'm American, because people look at you funny. But I look at Donald Trump, and yesterday or the day before yesterday, he holds a meeting for the top holders of his shitcoin, Trump coin or whatever. And you look at this and you go, well, okay, you just talk about strategic Bitcoin reserves and you think, you're telling why we need this and this, but at the same time, you don't really understand. And I think that starts with, I'm not saying that I don't want politicians to be Bitcoiners. I'm saying that we need to start with proper Bitcoin education so that these people understand what it actually means to have a strategic Bitcoin reserve and be able to use it to potentially benefit your country.
We have Trump, our own version of Trump in the UK, Farage, and you like him or loathe him, but he seems to be playing a similar playbook in terms of obviously a politician is going to want votes, so they're trying to get the Bitcoin votes. And Farage has been at a few. He was at Bitcoin Amsterdam. Do I think he gets it? No. And I think it's the same with Trump.
He's courting votes. That's the only way that's a politician's MO. You've got to court votes, and so there is a government out there that has been doing this. El Salvador. What are our thoughts on that? I mean, recently we've had the IMF come in, and there's been a lot of noise around this, and getting to the roots of this is very, very difficult, and trying to find out whether they have actually been told by the IMF that the only way they can unlock this loan is if they stop stacking Bitcoin. We don't ever, we are just lowly people down the totem pole. We get fed the information they want us to see. Any thoughts on that? Because all the noise is around America stockpiling Bitcoin, whereas we've got a country there, El Salvador, that's been doing it for the best part of 4 years.
Well, I can speak to that from the sense that I've set up a company in El Salvador. So my day job involves building AI-based solutions. They've got very favourable tax system for AI companies. Did I set a company up there because they had a strategic reserve? No. I'm much more interested from a company perspective around capital gains tax around Bitcoin. Even though they've kind of repealed the Bitcoin as tender law, still you're not charged capital gains on Bitcoin. So that's what's more important for me for a company.
Yeah, I went to El Salvador for the first time this February, or January actually, and I had a lot of people had told me a lot of stuff about it, and what I saw was a lot of El Salvadorians were skeptical about Bitcoin just because it was recommended by the government, because they've had so many shitty governments, so they have a very healthy distrust in anything the government does, and I think that's a sound. In this case, it's unfortunate because it means that they'll adopt it slower because of the government. It's ironic in a way, but I liked El Salvador. I liked the way I could use Bitcoin more often than I thought I would, because people had warned me you can't use Bitcoin everywhere, but practically everywhere you could. So I was very happy with El Salvador. But having said that, I wouldn't trust a politician, not even Bukele or Javier Milei or any of these characters. They are first and foremost they have their own interests, and you can never know what that is. And if there's something that is true for all politicians and across the spectrum, is that they're not trustworthy.
Did you get a feel the sense of hope though when you were there? Because I did.
I did.
And that was
Very much an optimistic country, and you saw like development. It's still a very much a developing nation, but they were actually developing stuff. Like they were building stuff everywhere, and you got this big aura of hope around the people. Like they were very happy with, from what I could tell. And
I see Grafton and
Yeah, we're fighting for the mic.
Okay.
So yeah, at the beginning there was like the Bitcoin law, and we were all enthusiastic about that. But you know, folks, like what is way better than a Bitcoin law is no law at all. Bitcoin is already its own system to adjudicate property rights and solving disputes. And like another country in Central America that is really close to El Salvador, Costa Rica, where Francis Pouliot, the founder of Bull Bitcoin, lives, is actually a place where you can go anywhere and pay with Bitcoin because there is no law at all. So we were able to just orange pill people, or at least give them the tools if they want to be able to accept payments self-custodially and eventually manage to get fiat out of it seamlessly and cheaply if they want to, until they are ready to not do that. And it's like a grassroots adoption that started with like farmers markets, local vendors, and a lot of also digital nomads that want to live in Costa Rica and that find it way more easily to use Bitcoin on a day-to-day basis than to use a fiat bank account in a third world country, basically. And I think it's a real contrast, because this kind of experiment will never make the headline of newspapers around the world, but it makes way more goods for Bitcoin adoption and for the use in day-to-day transaction and the resistance of the network. So I'm not exactly against what happened in El Salvador, but I think it's more the spotlight that makes that we speak about this. And I'm way more interested in this kind of experiment, be it in Costa Rica or everywhere else, where you can find the freedom to just create circular economies and just put tools in the hands of people so that they just can be sovereign and just don't need to ask daddy governments, do Bitcoin thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to that is I have no experience with El Salvador. I haven't been there, but working on Vexel is one of the most surprising things for me was people reaching out from countries in Africa and saying, hey, can we get this working here? Because we need this. We don't have bank accounts. You've seen this a lot with, like the women aren't allowed to have bank accounts in a lot of countries in Africa. And so I think that, again...
Lucky bastards.
Yeah. Well, you look at that, you see, like, as Knut said, it's like if a government is telling you to buy Bitcoin or to buy Trump coin or whatever they're shilling this week, is you do lose a little bit of trust in that because your government's telling you to do it. And when you look in countries like Africa, I had a guy reach out from Namibia, and he says, like, we need the Namibian dollar in Vexel. And I was like, what? Why? There's like, how many people could possibly be there? And I was like, if we're open source, so do it. He did it overnight, and all of a sudden you had a local circular economy that popped up. At first it was 20 people, and then now it's grown, and it's amazing to see. And I see people post on Twitter all the time as I bought like pickled jalapenos in Botswana on Vexel, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? I was never expecting that. We live in the West where we take for granted that we're basically taught from the time we're a kid is you're going to get a bank account. Me in America, I had my first checking account, and I did the mistake of writing my first bad check, and then had credit agencies chasing me for years and years. And you enter into this system of financial slavery in the West, and in countries, third world, where they don't have the same access to it, they approach finances and they approach things like Bitcoin differently. And when your government is telling you to buy it, then it's kind of like a red flag, I would say. So as he said, I think no law is Bitcoin is for individuals. Bitcoin is for me, it's for you, it's peer-to-peer.
Is that time, Lawrence? Was that the... Yeah. We're just winding up. So on that legal tender law, that did cause a lot of discussion when El Salvador passed that. From a praxeological standpoint, an Austrian economic standpoint, Knut or Theo, perhaps you can bat this one back and forth. Like the idea of you being told what you can use as a medium of exchange is antithetical in the first place.
Absolutely. Like, why should any man or woman or any of the other 72 genders be allowed to tell you what you can and cannot use as money. The idea is absurd. It's not a crime to use money, and like it ties back to KYC, right? It's absolutely absurd. The whole reason for that we need money is because we don't know who we're dealing with, but we put our trust in the money. If you know the other guy, if you have a KYC'd, if you know the person, like within your family, you don't need money because you trust the other people. So you can just do stuff for them and you trust that they'll do stuff for you. Like, money is the thing that solves the KYC problem. So introducing KYC laws is just absurd to me, and so are legal tender laws. Why should anyone be able to dictate what you use when acting in appreciation of another person's good or service? Like what you're doing, money is just, I'm showing you appreciation for giving me this pint of Guinness. That was very kind of you. Here's €6. I wish you could take sats.
And talking of which, the bar is open and Lawrence is glaring at me. Ben, have you got final words?
I was going to say, let the best form of money win, rather than trying to specify which currencies people should be using. But if there's scams, then stop that. But yeah, let the best form of money win.
And I'd like to thank Lawrence and Denny for a fantastic conference.
Yes, absolutely.
Great to be here on Ireland.
So final words from Grafton and Theo.
Yeah, peer-to-peer, no KYC. You have the tools available now. There's no reason to use exchanges anymore. Check out Vexel, please.
Yeah. I will just second that, like compulsory legal tender, like it doesn't make anything. I don't see what the business the government has to say to two consenting adults what they can physically or digitally exchange. When you think about it, it's kind of crazy. And so, yeah, it's kind of self-defeating. Like Bitcoin will win because of incentives and because it's just better. We don't have to force it on people.
So last question for you guys in the crowd. Hands up if you want your government to start stacking a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Just one dude.
Are you from the Vatican by any chance?
Yeah. The spook has shown himself.
North Korea, maybe.
Well, thank you everybody for listening. Really appreciate it. And thank you to the panelists.
Thank you, Daniel.